Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Supercars, and welcome to the Boost Mobile Gold Coast 500 Saturday report. That's a lot of words. Today, obviously, we had qualifying, top 10 shootout, and then race 31. So I'm going to mix, there's not really any news, so we're just going to jump straight into the qualifying / top 10 shootout highlights. So qualifying started off with Jake Kostecki hitting the wall at turn 12. He got quite a bit of front end damage and unfortunately was out for the rest of the session. He just simply went too hot into the corner. Hazelwood also went too hot, but this time at the final corner, and he got stuck into the tyre barrier with 9 minutes to go in the session. But he started at the back of the grid due to because he had a grid penalty for something from practice regarding some data, some wrong data. I don't know. I haven't read into that. I just know he had a grid penalty. Chaz Mostert, he was pretty quick in qualifying. He gave it his all. Brock Feeney, 12th for his first ever qualifying at the Gold Coast. Not too bad. He's had a bit of a quiet weekend so far. Now we're on to the shootout. Will Davison had a lock-up at turn 1, and unfortunately he cut the chicane, which means his time was never going to count. Brody Kostecki had a curb strike at turn 1 as well, so his time was deleted. Shane Van Gisbergen unfortunately made a mistake in the first sector and wasn't able to pull a great lap together. But David Reynolds, he was the one to do it. He was able to get pole position, which is amazing. It's his first pole since the Australian Grand Prix last year. He was 4/10 ahead of Shane. I'm really happy with them, really proud of them. They've done an amazing job, especially after what's happened at Bathurst. Of course, they were unable to race due to a massive crash. So I'm glad they were able to turn the car around and put the car on pole for the race. And just a quick shout out, Thomas Randall finished qualified 6th, which is really cool. His first time qualifying this track. Of course, he has been at this track, but as a co-driver, which means he hasn't qualified before. So good work by him. Now, let's get straight into the race 31 report. So the race started off fairly cleanly. Everyone got a decent start. Brock Feeney, however, not so much. I don't know if he stalled off the start or not. He just got very poor traction. He just didn't take off. But everyone else, decent start. Gisbergen and Reynolds basically took off. They were about 2 seconds away in the lead from Cameron Waters for a while there. On the third lap, Shane Van Gisbergen, in chasing David Reynolds, he was up pretty close to him, but at the final corner, he briefly clipped the tyre barrier. Not the tyre barrier, the tyres at the inner part of the corner. Didn't really seem to affect his pace at all, which was alright. On lap 9, Will Davison and James Courtney were the first ones to pit. Unfortunately, Davison had trouble as the right rear gun I don't think it was on properly. But on lap 15, Shane Van Gisbergen had a look down the inside of turn 1 on Reynolds. But unfortunately for him, Reynolds actually managed to take off at the exit. But however, on the following lap, on lap 16, Gisbergen passes Reynolds at the same corner, but this time makes it successful and leads from there. Lap 20, Cameron Waters is the first of the main hitters to pit. And then lap 25, David Reynolds pits as well. And then obviously, as a reaction, Shane Van Gisbergen pits on lap 26. And he manages to leave the pit lane ahead of Reynolds. I believe at that point, Gizzy had more fuel than Reynolds, I believe. Which obviously must have helped him in the long run later on. Lap 27, James Golding had a bit of he was seen with a lot of front end damage, and when the replay happened, it apparently happened because Bryce Forward, who was ahead of him at the time, heading down to the exit the turn 1 chicane, Bryce made a mistake and clipped the wall on the exit, and in doing so, James Golding, who was behind, smashed into his rear, and they both ended up with a lot of damage. I believe Forward had a black and orange mechanical flag, but James Golding, I think they didn't bother pitting him. He was actually alright, so that was alright. Will Brown had a moment at the chicane. Turns out he had a power steering failure. Now that's apparently he had the failure happened just as the entry into the back straight chicane, which is one of the places you don't want. So he was lucky to get out of there with very little damage. They were able to get him back out later on. Lap 32, Andre Heimgartner unfortunately had to go in the garage and retire due to some misfiring, which is a real shame because he's been doing so well, and he had a shit run at Bathurst. Obviously he was involved in that his car was involved in that big crash as well, so he hasn't really had any good luck lately, which is a shame because he's been quite speedy. Lap 51, Cameron Waters, at the exit of turn 1 chicane, he clips the wall, he loses the rear a bit and the rear clips it and causes him to spin, and he managed to do a full 360 and get back into action without losing any positions, which is really cool. Pretty good driving from him there. Lap 53, David Reynolds pits, but however, when he's in the pit lane, they had to tighten up the bolts on his steering wheel because he was suffering from wheel wobble, because apparently two bolts was loose. So that wouldn't have felt nice at all, and that did, his pace definitely dropped because of that, in my opinion. You could see it. He was although Gisbergen, to be honest, he was dominant all day, but that would have been quite distracting. It didn't really affect him too much in the pits anyway, because he managed to get it done before the fuel all the fuel was taken. So that was alright. And then 3 laps later, Shane Van Gisbergen pits and ended up being 10 seconds clear of David Reynolds. So he was basically long gone for the rest of the race. And Shane Van Gisbergen obviously wins race 31, his 20th race win of the season, and he won with a 17-second lead with Reynolds. And there was some decent battles. We saw Davison and Mostert have a bit of a battle towards the end there. Davison wasn't able to get ahead of Mostert, and Mostert managed to finish 3rd. But Davison was quite speedy. He drove pretty well considering he had that pit drama. So good recovery from him. He just wasn't able to pull the move down for the podium. But a 4th, it could be worse. So overall, the race was okay. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't intense like we normally see here at the Gold Coast. Obviously, there was no safety cars either. So, but there was a few battles there, but it was quiet. It was a quiet race. Not much drama happened. So pretty curious to see how tomorrow goes. Yeah. So now let's have a quick look at the race results. So obviously Shane Van Gisbergen is the winner, and of course because of that he has effectively won his 3rd championship, which so massive congrats to him and Red Bull. Massive achievement. He's been incredibly dominant all year. It's really well deserved. And then 2nd place, David Reynolds. Incredible result for him, especially considering it's actually his first race since Auckland, which was well over a month ago now. So really amazing result for him. And then Chaz Mostert rounds up the podium there, so good work for Walkinshaw Andretti United. And then after him, obviously, Will Davison, he wasn't able to stick the move he wasn't able to stick the move on Mostert and has to settle for 4th. Cameron Waters 5th, despite that bit incident there and the spin. Great work by him. Di Pasquale in 6th, Brody Kostecki in 7th, James Courtney in 8th, and then we've got Mark Winterbottom in 9th, leading the way for the Team 18. Nick Percat rounds up the top 10. 11th, Tommy Randall. There was a bit of a moment with Tommy Randall and Brody Kostecki. There was a bit of an argument on the radio. It was quite funny, actually. Basically, it was like who pushed who scenario. Tim Slade in 12th, Jack LeBrock 13th, Brock Feeney in 14th. He's had a quiet weekend so far. He hasn't been as high as he normally is. Of course, got to cut him some slack. It is his first time ever at this track. Hang on. In 2019, he raced a Mark car. But in a supercar, it's his first time here. So a bit of a quiet weekend there. He had a couple battles there with Holdsworth. But most of the time he stayed out of trouble. So solid finish. But of course, being in the Red Bull, he can do better. But I'm curious to see what he can do tomorrow with the experience he gained today. You got to remember, this is his first time here in the supercar, so cut him some slack. And of course, Lee Holdsworth in 15th, Chris Pither in 16th, 17th, Scotty Pye. Really unfortunate result for him, considering he was actually sitting in 10th, right behind Mark Winterbottom there, with 4 laps to go. Unfortunately, they had to fuel up a little bit because they didn't meet the number that you are required to have, so that dropped him down significantly, down to pretty much towards the very end, down to 17th, which is a real shame. He just never has any good luck, does he? Which is a real shame, because he's a great bloke, great driver, just needs to get a break sometimes. Todd Hazelwood 18th, not bad result, from 25th to 18th. James Golding in 19th, could have gone better if it wasn't for that incident. Macaulay Jones in 20th, and then Jack Smith 21st, 22nd Bryce Forward. He had that drama with Golding, remember, and had that damage at the back. And then 23rd, Jake Kostecki, a bit of an average weekend for him so far, unfortunately. And then Will Brown had the power steering issue. And then 25th was Andre Heimgartner, who had to retire, unfortunately, due to the misfire. Now, I forgot to do this at Bathurst, so I'm going to make sure I do this now. So basically, my Let's Talk Supercars, I like to do a driver of the day for each of the days. Unfortunately, I forgot to do it for Bathurst, so I'll do it here. My driver of the day for Saturday has got to be David Reynolds. From that cracking pole lap he did today, it was really, really good. And to be able to finish second after essentially missing, not racing in a supercar for over a month, compared to the others where they got to do Bathurst. It's pretty solid result for him, and the car hasn't been there all year. Hasn't been very consistent, but I'm glad they've done well. Really happy for him and the Penrite guys, and curious to see how he goes tomorrow. So yeah, he's my driver of the day. Let me know what your driver of the day is in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So that's all I've got for the Saturday report. I reckon probably tomorrow Shane can probably get another win, but this time I reckon Mostert can finish second, with Reynolds probably for 5th, I reckon, and then Cameron Waters in 3rd, sorry, I reckon. That's so top 3, I reckon, my predictions for tomorrow: Gizzy, Mozzie, Waters. Alright, now if you want to, that's all from me for today. If you enjoyed that and you'd like to see more, subscribe. Feel free to check out my Instagram. The link will be down below in the bio. Not the bio, the description. That's where basically I am most active. That's where I'll put some news stuff and anything about my channel, anything. Just basically, I just post anything on there. So check that out, and stay tuned for the Sunday report. Bye for now.